going to talk about a range of workplace initiatives that Blythe and Eld have used in Australia, the processes really that we've used to create exceptional and world-class working environments for people. I'll start off by giving you a little glimpse of who we are, because I'm sure you're wondering why I've come all the way from Australia to talk to you about workplace. I'll talk to you a little bit about what the modern workplace is and the key drivers that we're seeing at the moment for change. I'll give you some case studies, and then we'll talk about the what, how and the why of world-class working environments. The case studies that I'm going to use tonight, and I've gone the wrong way straight away. I've selected three for three key reasons. The first is Campus MLC, and I'll talk to you about these in great detail a little later, which was in Sydney, and it was a pivotal project for Blythe and Eld, in that it created a huge change in the way workplace was looked upon internationally. We won international awards for this project and national awards, and it's influenced workplace very broadly. The second one I will talk to you about is the National at Docklands. That was a project in Melbourne in Australia where we not only created the interior of the workplace, but we were able to put skin around it too and create the building. And the third one I'll talk to you about is a really small fit out that we're not quite finished, but I wanted to talk to you about it tonight because it's very sustainable, it's very small, and it was very fast. And it contrasts quite nicely with the other two, which were very big and what I like to call slow architecture, where we had the chance to really work intensively with the client and had a lot of time to spend. So who are we? Who is BDN? Well, we're really just quite a small firm, probably by your terms. We're a medium-sized firm in Australia of about 200 architects and designers, and we work internationally and nationally. We're best known for workplace design, but we work quite broadly and have done things like stadia around the world. We're just finishing the Venice Stadium at the moment. This was Stadium Australia for the Sydney Olympics. We do new office buildings. We're very well known for creative workplaces. This is a bank in New Zealand. And for less creative workplaces, this is a legal firm in Melbourne. And for beautiful one-off Australian houses. I had to show you this because this is the Blue Mountains around Sydney, such a beautiful country. But that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. So the modern workplace. Let's have a think about what workplace has been over, say, the last century. This was very progressive in 1904, very much leading-edge workplace of its time. And look at the light in that space for 1904. In 1927, Hollywood was telling us this is what the modern workplace would look like. I don't think it ever did quite look like this. And in the 1960s, this was their version of hot desking. The other thing that was happening in the 60s is the influence of the modernist buildings that we saw proliferate throughout our cities. And so that became a huge influence on the workplaces that we saw, based on simple, minimalist, modern lines. The 70s started to see a style of systems furniture approach, still not particularly ergonomic, but a bit more of a kit of parts, if you like, starting to come together. By the 80s, we had problems with technology that we hadn't quite mastered. And in the 90s, we kind of mastered those things, and we've got the technology right, but look at the environments that we were putting people in. Were they really environments that were right for people? They kind of made people feel like this. You know, did anyone really care about how they'll be treating their people in their work environment? When I talk to my clients at the beginning of a project about how they would really truly like to work, and this is everyone from the CEO down to the most junior person in the organisation, it's more something like this, if we're really honest about how we would like to spend our days. So then there was a turning point, and for Blythe and Eld, that turning point was a project in Sydney called Campus MLC. And MLC is, in Australia, a superannuation company or a pensions fund and investment company. They were very brown cardigan. Now that might be a term, I don't know if you understand that term, it's something we say, but it means very conservative. And they were having a lot of trouble in attracting the sort of people that they wanted to be able to be competitive in the market. They lived in this building, which was a 1950s building in North Sydney, and nothing really had been done to it since it was designed in the 50s to accommodate this sort of workplace. They'd put in some workstations and some offices and they'd messed around, but nothing really that addressed the way that people really needed to work. And at the start of this project, a traditional team was taken on board to deliver a traditional project. And a few months into that process, their change manager said to them, "This is not working. This is not what we need as an organisation." And the team was dismissed, and there was a big search, and Blythe and Nield were brought on board. And when Trudy Ann came on board, I'll just flick through these, we started exploring some really key things that were going on. And one of the things that the organisation hadn't even considered in what they were doing was that 85% of their workplace costs were going in salary. So to not take note of how people needed to work and wanted to work and to show respect for how people could work was really saying, we don't care about that 85% that we're blowing on salaries. So the yellow portion became the portion of the pie that was the target to change in what we did. And the key things that we focused on were how we could connect people, how we could inspire people, and how variety could be provided in the workplace. So how do you connect people in a 1950s building? Well, it needs to happen in two ways. It needs to happen horizontally, of course, across the floor, and it needs to happen vertically through the building. It needs to happen both physically and visually, because if you can't see the person, you won't go to the person. You will pick up the phone or you'll email them, and you won't get the same outcome. So a huge hole was cut through the building to create connection and visual connection and physical connection, so people could see each other. And at the end of each of those stairs was created bump points, places where people would stop and talk to someone who was from another department or another floor. They may have never met them before, but they would start to connect with them. And the key in that is the knowledge exchange that goes on without people having to arrange a meeting. So it's the incidental stuff that happens. There were zones created where people could stop and have a coffee and a bite to eat around those points. So that became the hub of the building. And it was set up so that it was almost like a vertical retail strip, so that each floor had different facilities on it. And if I felt like going and cooking myself something on the stove, I could go to level 7. And if I felt like going and having pasta, I could go down to the cafe on level 3. And in doing that, I'd be going to floors that I would never normally go to, and I'd be speaking to people that I would never normally meet. And I would be exchanging knowledge and building up a rapport with the people that I worked with. So inspire. How often do we think about inspiring people in the workplace? Why don't we think about that? Why don't we acknowledge that when I'm inspired by what's going on around me, I am so much more productive. I think so much more laterally. I come up with ideas I never would normally think of. Why don't we think about inspiring our people? This is what the change manager from Campus MLC said when we started talking about this. Now imagine this. Coming to work each day to a building that greeted you like an entrepreneurial, inspiring person. Why wouldn't you come to a building like that? Why isn't everybody